Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. It's been many, many years since the last time I interviewed Eric. Last time we both did a double interview with Eric Levin and Eric Fisher together. But
Oh yeah.
you were actually one of the first people that I interviewed for my Crazy Wisdom podcast in the very beginning. I think you were one of the first 4 or 5 episodes, and
I'm so
learned a
impressed.
lot. And we became friends. And now I'm down in Buenos Aires and excited to talk to you about what you think is going on with AI. Not only that, but also just any sort of spiritual understandings you have come to in the last few years, the last time we've done it. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
It has
So
been. I think we did that first podcast in 2018, 6 years
yep,
ago,
yep,
when I first moved to Boulder. Wow. Wild.
yeah. And then we did the last one in Boulder in that awesome house overlooking that with the beautiful view of the mountains and the trampoline in the background or in the back. And now you're in the mountains right now, aren't you?
I am. You can't tell from this, but I'm looking out at some mountains here. And that other house we were at is still mine.
Uh-huh.
It's still there. Yeah.
So, well, should we start with spiritual understandings? I know that words can't really do it justice. We could go down that path, or we could talk about AI in terms of spirituality. I would love to start there. Do you think this thing is beneficial for human beings, or do you think that it's detractory from human beings?
Going to be both.
It's probably going
I
to be both.
always uh, I always reference a rock is a weapon. Depends who uses it, right? I could pick up a rock and kill you. I won't, but somebody else would. So is it the rock's fault or is it the person? You
Mm.
know, guns don't kill people. People kill people. I don't know. Is Facebook a problem? Is it not a problem? These are always the big questions that tech has been asking for years, and it just seems like it's all about how people use the tools, you know?
And then, but in your like with Facebook, it seemed like there was a negative effect. I mean, obviously, there's something beautiful there as well. But the negative effect came in ways that we weren't really prepared for, and nobody really guessed. And this is why I want to talk to you about it, because it feels like you have a keen insight into a lot of different things. And what do you think is like? Do you get any sense of where this is heading in terms of the negative effects of AI?
Oh, yeah, I can list out so many negatives. Um, when I worked at Facebook, I was for a time the design lead of Newsfeed. And that was when this was like 2010. This is when we created a new thing called Top News versus Most Recent. And before then, it was a chronological feed. And of course, they discovered like people are going to Facebook all the time and it's the same feed. And so they're just leaving. So they're like, we can't do
Mm.
that. So we're going to just algorithmically sort it to just kind of keep new content going. And the average number of friends was super low. So they had to start injecting content like suggested posts based on your interests. And before you know it, here we are with algorithmic feed, and it's all it's all not what
And
it is.
that was already AI. That originally
That was
started
it.
with AI. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they let me in. The newsfeed engineering team was like, check out this new ranking system we have. According to our calculations, these 5 people should be your top friends. And I was like, oh my God, what? How did you know? And they're like, well, based on comments and likes and messages and photos together and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh man, that's weird. I don't know. I don't know if we should surface that.
One of the
And
great
at some time.
one of the great things that I got from my dad recently is that he never considered Facebook as a new technology. But then recently he talked about something that was a new technology, which was the state. Facebook figured out how to keep the state of the entire network updated. So if you were to like a post, it would immediately update to all 7 billion other or 1 billion other users, basically. So the
Oh,
whole thing
right
was,
away.
yeah, and that's why they created React. Were you there when that was happening?
No, I think that was later. So I brought up some issues at the time. 2012 was when I left, and I was confused as to where we were going because they were all consumed with like, let's be the biggest company in the world. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't doubt that you will be. I'm sure that you will be. But then what will we do then? And what do we do about these things? And like, what if people post beheadings on their Facebook page? Like, what do we do about that? And they just didn't have any answers. So after I left is when they they rewrote the whole company for mobile because the iPhone went mainstream in 2013,
Mm.
14. And they also finished building the whole self-serve ad system, which, to be fair, is pretty incredible. They didn't have that before. And so kudos to them for the tools. But as we know, iPhone goes mainstream, Facebook goes mobile, ad system goes serious, and then you have Trump in 2015 and Cambridge Analytica in 2016, and off we go into the future here. And now there's shock is tremendous. And,
Where we are, yeah, the future shock. Now we're in future shock, and now we have a new technology, and that's
yeah,
LLM based. And I've been hearing that the LLMs actually don't interact very well with the pre. They're kind of they don't really mesh well, or it's taking a lot of mind share away from the previous machine learning algorithms. Like it's a whole new thing that's basically taking over.
it could
And
be. Well,
yeah,
people need to understand also that when we talk about AI, like the consumer-based AI that is in the news a lot is LLM, right? It's
yep.
that you can talk to your computer. That's its own thing. But AI itself is much bigger
Yeah.
and not conversational necessarily. And it's
Mm.
being used in all these other insidious ways that many of which are really great. But this conversational approach to the computer is definitely this new wave of like, I can see the future where we don't have phones, we don't have
Yeah.
screens, we just have like glasses and you
Yeah.
just talk to yourself
Yeah.
and everything gets done. And that's definitely the next move for sure. But I
And
can foresee many challenges to that as well.
yeah, because I can see the parts that I'll like, which is that we don't need to do this conversation, even if we're remote. We don't even need to do this conversation sitting in front of a computer. I can go outside and have my drone autonomously follow and videotape me. You can do the same thing on your side, and then we can just both walk in the two different parks and have a
Totally.
recording of it. That's the really
Or
cool stuff.
better yet, like you'll just have your AI avatar talk to my AI avatar, and we never actually have to interact at all because I'll be at the beach by myself. So
But that would remove it. That would make it like that would remove the beauty of what we're doing right now, which is just sharing the mind space. And so
mhm.
what's your take on where AI can actually fit into that to make it better, and where's the line where it completely removes it? This is something I've had a little like intuition over the past few days of just like if it's gonna well, just like it could just lead to totally absurd world where we just have the AI start to take over everything. And it turns out it doesn't do it very well, but it sounds like it's doing it very well. And so like,
Yeah.
there's like a collapse basically where everything gets
Yeah.
much, much harder to do. I sometimes think about my ancestors and their large bureaucracies and, just maybe my grandfather. And like life might have been actually more straightforward and more easy without all the machines. And we added the machines,
Oh
and now I
yeah.
have to like call this automated system, and this automated system makes me go through like loops and it's just like
Yeah.
nightmare. Like that might not have happened back then. Uh,
Agreed.
yeah,
Agreed.
yeah,
Although I remember coming into this world in the 80s, and both my parents were paper people. And
uh-huh.
so our house had a lot of paper. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't know what this is. It's just it's a lot to manage. My dad had his patient files in an actual set of shelves. My mom starting a magazine, she had typewriters and papers everywhere. And so for us, like sitting down with a screen and saying, oh, we could just put all these papers on the screen and it could
Uh-huh.
organize it for us. Like that's a clear win.
Yeah.
So as a kid growing up, I mean, I'm sure you had this too. It's like, cool, this is obviously the move. Let's do this. That's been done. And now, because it's a business and we have to keep going because
Mm,
that's the rule, like they have to keep inventing stuff. So I
yeah.
agree that it's probably pushing us to be more complex than we need and
Yeah.
trying to find every possible hole to fill.
Yeah.
But then you have this whole new generation coming online who never had paper, never had typewriters, literally coming in at 13 years old now talking to their phone. So I can't speak for them. I just know that they're going to be more adaptive than we are. We're just sitting here being like, when I was a kid, we used to have to,
Yeah.
hand write something.
But
And
we also
and
remember what it was like, and maybe this will kick in terms of like their immune system, their like spiritual immune system to all the machines everywhere. Maybe it'll kick in that they don't need a felt memory sense of what it was like to
yeah,
go touch grass before all of it happened.
maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I want to give you an anecdote though
sure.
that is cool, has me hopeful. Okay, so I built my home here, and it's a highly modernized home with all of the stuff that they're promoting these days. We got solar panels, we got geothermal systems, we got radiant heating and cooling. I mean, I really went all the things. And this summer, while I had a full house, my radiant cooling system, the pump, the geo pump, like broke. It just
Uh,
kept turning off,
uh-huh.
and the HVAC company that installed this doesn't even exist anymore. So I had nowhere to turn to. And I called a few different groups, and like, we don't do radiant cooling, which is a unique thing. And so I was kind of on my own. So I thought, I wonder if ChatGPT knows something.
Yeah.
So I started talking with it. I was like, here's my system. Here's the name of the brand. Here's the way that it's set up. And it knew about the system as
Mm,
though it had read the manual. So I was able to find out like what the symbols on the screen meant
yeah.
and
Yeah.
what possible issues could happen. And we determined that, the flow was a little bit lower than it should be, and there might have been a tiny bit of air in the system. So it like walked me through how to
Yeah. This
drain
is
the air and increase the flow, and it all worked again. Now that is crazy. How can a consumer-based AI for like the masses know
mm.
about a specific ritzy geothermal pump system? I
And
didn't
you
have to
didn't
call
you
anybody.
you didn't give it the documents. You didn't give it any documents. No, interesting. Okay, because I'll explain. This ties in with an anecdote or maybe an idea or a story. So AI Whispers, we've been leading the AI Whispers, and one of the big things that we're doing down here now is teaching people how to code using the AI, or teaching people how to get AI to code for them. And it's this very like specific thing. And most of the time, you have to give it the context. That's the number one blocker, is like going on the internet, finding the latest library, and then downloading that into Cursor and just giving it to Claude.
Right.
And so I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we took a field trip to China and we did an agile manufacturing? Because in China, you can, in Shenzhen, you can go and, find all these different parts. You can go build physical things. And if you need a new part, you just go to the market and you go get that part. That used to exist in the United States, doesn't exist here. That all exists in China. So I had this idea of like going and doing a field trip, and all this was sparked by this guy on Twitter who used Claude, the give Claude the context to build a nuclear fuser inside of his house. He's an engineering student, and he just like got Claude to support him to build this nuclear fuser, which is like
Well,
this highly complex thing. And so it gave
yeah.
me an idea of, we can go to China and build physical products with this. We just like need to upload the documentation to Claude. And then I got another idea today, which I was in the park next to my house, and there were these pods that had descended from the tree, and it was a fluffy substance inside the pod that looked like
Hmm.
cotton. And so I started asking ChatGPT, like, what is this? And it had they had the name of the tree on the sign, and so it knew all this different stuff. And I asked it whether you could make clothing out of it. It's a native tree, and so it said no, you can't make it a clothing because it has really short fibers.
Hmm.
But they did add it to pillow stuffing and jackets and all these and
Oh
down
yeah.
comforters and stuff like that. And
Wow.
so then somebody commented on my tweet about this, and he's like, ask ChatGPT to give you 5 business ideas of how to use this new sustainable thing. And ChatGPT gave me these awesome business ideas, and I was like, okay, here's a new idea, which is we go into the Amazon and we talk to the native tribes there, and we use the translation to go, and they can identify the plants, and we can go test out new plant substances as well. So we got the physical stuff in China, plant stuff. So that
Wow.
was just an idea. So that's where it's headed in terms of education. A lot of people think that this is a new automation type of thing, but it really feels like a new educational revolution. And so like where does that lead? That feels like the most exciting for me, is like you fixed your system using this thing. What happens when we
Yeah.
start building systems that will
Building systems
work
better. Yeah.
work in that way? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm super into it. I mean, I, I also want to say, like, this feels like the appropriate shift for a mass society,
Mm,
right? This wouldn't have worked if we were just like localized tribes.
mm,
And what happens in a
yeah.
mass society
Mm,
is you lose quality. So
mm,
it's like
mm,
the American education system uh, is probably not that good overall. There's probably like a big percentage of teachers that are not very good,
yeah.
and systems in place that are not very good.
Yeah.
So, what's the difference between that versus just using AI? Wouldn't it be better to
Yeah.
just do the masses with AI instead
Yeah.
of that? Because
Yeah.
it's not like it's any better. And so, if that's the case, I could argue that using a ChatGPT type tutor to learn
Ooh.
about history or math is probably better than, some percentage of actual human teachers, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited for like self-directed learning,
Yeah.
or even a AI tutor that helps you learn by guiding you with stuff. I mean, as a kid from the digital age, I would have loved to just
Yeah.
talk with the computer to learn. I'm doing it now. I learned
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
about history and finance and whatever. So I'm super down for that. Obviously, what's supposed to happen with colleges? What are they just going to keep getting more and more expensive and people are going to have more debt? That doesn't make any sense for jobs that don't even exist.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
waiting for that to blow up.
Yeah.
Um, so this will be this whole new age of not only just like learning stuff, but then like refeeding the system to create new things from the learning, right?
Mm.
I'm a little bit concerned though. Aren't there some precautions now put in place where different companies or sources are like stopping the data flow so that it won't be trained on that?
Yeah.
And that's probably a bad thing because it's like, well, we need all that data to keep it going. We can't like hide data from the AI
Well,
because
there's
then,
there's a few interesting things. One I might be able to add something new to this conversation is the synthetic data. So a
yeah,
lot of
yeah, yeah.
people, yeah, a lot of people
Feeding
think that Claude. So the Claude is one of the big the ones that people watch out for. Like now, if you put your blog or your website up, you have to specifically try to stop Claude from taking it
reading it.
and
Oh
and
God.
and but Claude itself, Anthropic, a lot of people think that they built an equivalent model, even better model for coding than ChatGPT due to synthetic data. And then I heard whispers of a team. I forget what the name of it is. Like a 4-person team went and trained their own foundational model that is equivalent to Claude using only synthetic data. So like we're able to replicate
Oh
billions and
God.
billions of dollars worth in a small team of 4 people using only synthetic data. Um,
Oh gosh.
I'm not sure whether that's accurate or not. I should go check it out. But like this gets into really interesting territory because right now it seems like these OpenAI, Anthropic, and Meta are just going to own AI and it's all going to be centralized. But if it's easy to replicate, then it actually might be extremely decentralized. And maybe OpenAI has no moat, particularly with Meta, the company you used to work for, they now have billions and billions of dollars. They've open sourced all their models. Like the LLM is completely out of and so what happens if Meta just like what happened? The lead that OpenAI seems to have is going to get much, much smaller, basically. And then what happens if it's just totally decentralized and we can just train our own models and it's like there is no moats, there is no business thing, like what happens next? Like that totally disappears. It feels like it's going to be a pretty crazy world. Someone else.
Hmm. That sounds good. I think I'd rather have something like that than have a couple companies own like the most powerful tech that's like being used everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, what about people's growing reliance on it as a
Mm-hmm.
source of truth when
Mm-hmm.
it's not?
Yep.
And and then what if people are using conversational models to learn or do stuff, but then like it's biased on purpose because of ads,
Yep.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like it's giving you answers and talking to you, but kind of pushing you in a certain direction. But you think it's true and objective, but it's not. And that's a little scary too. Um, I will I will say my feeling these days is that this is the first time in the history of uh, civilization that we know that everybody's in the same room and that we
Mm-hmm.
see that language does not work internationally. Like just because somebody speaks English in New York or in
Yeah.
Alabama doesn't mean it's the same
Yeah.
English.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see this with the Democrat Republican rhetoric. They literally say the same words. They say the same words, but they mean totally different
Yeah.
things.
Yep.
And so, like everything Democrats will say, that Trump will say, and it's the same thing. So I think we've maybe reached this point where we've used language for many, many, many years
We
to
thought we were
conquer
talking about the
people and
same thing.
build stuff. What?
We thought we were
Yeah,
talking about the same thing, but it turns
yeah,
out that yeah,
right. And we're not. And now we're like, oh no, here we are. What do we do now?
yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what we do.
Well, and
It's
this
then again, new generation, right? So they'll adapt with it. Maybe we're just old now.
well, so this gets into the downside, which is that it feels like of AI specifically, of LLM specifically, is that we're going to start, the Meta is going to start generating social media worlds depending on our algorithms that you talked about. Like, and so instead of going and looking what other people are creating, generating with their own brains and minds. It's going to be AI is generating your own immediate social environment world, and then eventually into the virtual worlds and augmented worlds. And so we're
Yeah.
going to be interacting not like it's already that way a little bit anyway, just because the nature of consciousness and language, as we just discussed, like that already kind of is that way. But now it's going to be on napalm, where we just live in these worlds that are essentially tailored to us, that are generated, and we spend all of our times in there with no ability to get outside of unless you have the curiosity to poke your own thing, try to get out of it.
Isn't that how we all have been living in our
This
level of
whole time.
consciousness this whole
Yeah,
time?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
People are
yeah.
like conditioned walking around, and some people are like, wait, who am I? And what is this? And maybe I'm not who I think I am. So it's the same thing modeled again. People living in
It's the
the
same
contain.
thing, except the realisticness, because right now, as we are right now, I cannot generate particularly in the augmented world, because once we have the glasses or the things, I can't augment a pink elephant in the room. So I can't do that. I can imagine it, but
Yeah.
but I can't like see it or feel
Mhm.
it maybe in the future. And like 10 years from now, that might actually be possible to start generating things that don't exist, maybe, and then bring
Yeah.
in subconscious stuff. So yes, it is the same, but it's also now
Just yeah.
powered with AI,
That's
basically.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about if everybody's got the glasses in the future and no more phones, and I'm next to you and you've got
Yeah.
your glasses, and we can both project the same thing
Yeah. Interesting.
together, we can both see the pink elephant and it's not really there, but it is in the glasses.
Yeah.
Um, that opens up some possibilities as well. But also, if people are walking around just projecting their own reality, which is already
Yeah.
happening
Right.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like now it's like actually happening. Like, I don't know, it kind of just shows that maybe we're just trapped in the same cycles forever, no matter what happens. It just gets weirder and weirder and weirder.
Okay, well, let's go into the spiritual part, because there an escape? Is there an escape from that in our current thing? Is there an escape?
Yeah, go sit under a tree.
But you're not escaping from anything, right? Because any method to get out of it is just part of that whole thing, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could argue recursively forever, but I would say that attention has never been a subject of conversation for years and years. I mean, newspapers, magazines, radio, television has been harnessing attention.
Yeah.
Now, finally, we have an attention economy. It's like a term. People talk about it. There's
Uh-huh.
mental health stuff. There's
Uh-huh.
screen time. It's like, okay, cool. See, people are becoming aware of attention is a thing, and
Uh-huh.
mindfulness and meditation, bringing awareness back to your own attention on your internal systems, on your nervous system regulation. It's all happening. That was not talked about in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So that tells me that we are awakening to
Mhm.
this idea of awareness and attention. And, there are people who are using their screens less, being more
Mhm.
mindful of their tech use. Certainly I do. And so, yeah, maybe if AI continues to go and the devices continue to get smaller, then it's doing more of the stuff and you don't need to do so much on the screen and you can go sit under a tree. And then you're like, okay, and
Mhm.
now I've returned to the earth,
Mhm.
finally. Finally returned to the earth after many, many decades or hundreds of years of tech warping us. And so
Yeah.
maybe a return to the earth will be a return to spirit, to cyclical natures of reality, to
Mhm.
um, helping the earth or helping ourselves on the earth, like be more connected and stewarding a better experience. And there will be a separate class of people who are
Yeah.
really tech oriented and they go live in little
Yeah.
boxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're home with their Apple Vision Pro, and that's their whole life.
Yeah,
And
because
it's like,
there's the tech that will enable us to do this instead of us in two different rooms, like us both going on a walk with our drones and such. And then there's the other one, which is the full-on immersive virtual reality, or the Brave New World type of stuff, and then we get the drugs and the genetic engineering and all
yeah,
that
totally
different
right.
stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, well, people have already been, apparently gaming is so huge. I really didn't know
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, but gaming is tremendous. Like 50% or something of the population is into gaming. So they've already been doing it on their couch with a TV. So
Yes.
you might as well
Yeah.
just put it on your face and then it'll be really good. Grand
Yeah.
Theft Auto in 3D.
Yeah.
So like it's fine. But then is that good? You go in there, you do your thing, you take it off, and now you go sit under a tree. You're done.
Yeah.
I don't know. You
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
only have one screen on my phone. Um, like this is my screen. It's the home screen. I've got the default apps. I've got a folder for work things and a folder for my house apps, and that's it. I don't
Yeah.
have any other apps. I don't have any other notifications. I pick it up, I do the thing, I put it down. I don't even have Facebook on here. It's just a tool. Um, so that's great, you know. It's nice. It's not taking over my life. I have more things to do in the real world. If the glasses makes it easier, if AI makes it easier, then
Mm,
great. Let's just get off less and have them do it.
mm.
Um, that's why I say if I have an AI avatar of me that's like loaded up with, I don't know, things that I would say, somebody inquires about renting my space, like it can just email them back with all the details.
Yeah,
And
there's the line again. There's the line again because I would never want to. And Google just released their LM Studios where you can now take any sort of document and you can turn it into a lifelike podcast between two podcast hosts, basically. And for me, it's funny because I run this podcast. I've now got 400 episodes, and I despise listening to podcasts. And so like a Google version of this, but a lot of people are really liking it. But like where does that go? Because if I just started to use that instead of actually recording these podcasts, I
yeah.
would find that the reason why I love doing these is because for some reason when you turn on a microphone, it gets people to talk about things in a way that's really interesting for me in the moment of doing these things. Like the mind, it's a little bit of the mindfulness thing as well. But
Oh, I like the AI note taker stuff that we have nowadays for Zoom,
yes,
where it's we can just talk for an hour, and then at the end it can just read everything we said and say, here's kind of the gist of what you spoke about. That's
mm-hmm.
pretty cool. That's helpful.
Yeah,
I would argue that most of the words people use are superfluous and we just talk way too much anyway. So like let AI just narrow it down and say, what are you really saying? What is what is
yeah,
that? There you go.
interesting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We'll move on. Um,
Yeah,
but but yeah, you know, also with computer vision, you know, if the glasses can actually see what you're seeing and can tell, and that feeds into the AI, and you can really, like my geothermal system, you know, I'm wearing the glasses
yeah.
and it's like, hey, can you tell me about this system? Oh yeah, this looks like a geothermal system made by this company. This, and I'm like, okay, where does this tube go? And it's like, oh, this does this, and how do I fix this? Imagine, I mean, everybody could be a lot more skilled in all of their stuff because they would have this
Until
virtual
until the
system.
humanoid robots come. Well, until the humanoid robots come and the autonomous agents, which are the humanoid, which will merge with the humanoid robots, but the autonomous agents, like, because those things you just mentioned, like, well, maybe in 5 years that your system
Right.
has autonomous software agents inside of it that connect with the
Yeah.
humanoid robot, and
Right.
then it's like, well, at that
Right.
point, the only thing we have is walking around the forest doing the improv,
Yeah.
dancing all the
That's
time,
great.
which I've already, as you know, I've already been preparing for this world by just, doing all of my landed
Yeah.
gentry type of activities like dancing and all those other things, yeah, and surfing.
If we have humanoid robots, though, can they just be sex dolls too at the same?
Yes,
Like you might as well just merge them. Like, why
that's
have a
def-
human robot that you can't have sex with? Just like throw that in.
and let me add a insight into here as well, which is somebody posted about 4 weeks ago. Why would we need humanoid robots? Why wouldn't we just get like? Why wouldn't it just like? What does a humanoid robot actually offer us rather than creating a specialized robot in that
Yeah,
scenario?
yeah.
Might
Why
be,
be
yeah,
humanoid? Right.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
why?
I don't know. So I've been thinking about it, and it does feel like so let's take the agriculture example. I've seen a demo of a robot, bending over and picking the rice and doing all the farming activities. And then I think about it, well, we already have robots that do a lot of those things and they look very different. They don't look like human beings.
Yeah.
But then I think about the laundry, like going like a robot that could go replace me doing the laundry or
Yeah.
cooking or those types of things.
Sure.
And then it does feel like maybe it's you have the home robot. So you have the robot that hangs out at home and just does all the things that you would normally do.
Yeah.
But then in any sort of industrial setting, like they've now got these robot kitchens in San Francisco that are
Oh,
cooking
yeah.
for a bunch of people. Those don't
Yeah.
look like humans. Those are like robot, like industrial, like so
Like
maybe it's
a
two
assembly line or
classes.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah. I'm all for whatever's happening with robotics. I just because again, it's not like people are doing it because it's interesting necessarily. They're doing it because they have to. Like we have to keep
Yeah. Yeah.
moving.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're just like, well, let's just keep doing it. And then competition. Let's do this too. And I
So
don't
let's
know.
get into that philosophical thing, because you mentioned it, and and you saw it at Facebook as well. And when you ask people questions, like three questions in advance, like, well, why are we doing this? Well, because we got to do this. And then, well, why do we need to do that? Well, because we got to do this. And then they run out of answers after about 3 to 4 times.
Well,
Like,
there's no humanistic vision in there. It's just we're doing it because we can. And if we don't do it, they're going to do it. And we're already so far.
yeah,
So we're
yeah,
going to just keep going.
yeah.
Like money's coming in. So we're going to just keep doing it. And I'm like, okay, I believe you. You'll do it. And then what? And then what? And then what? What is this vision of the future? This is the thing that I feel is missing, ever since Steve Jobs died. Like
He
he
was
kind
the
of
only
gave us a
one. He was the
vision
only one in
about where
there.
we're
Yeah.
going,
Yeah.
right? And you could be like, oh, I see. Okay. So in the future, the computers will be really thin and we'll
Yeah.
have like a personal device. Like, okay, I get that. But
Yeah.
he's gone. Apple's just been a marketing machine,
Yeah.
just
Interesting.
incremental upgrades. And I haven't gotten any vision about what does life look like and why is this better? Right? And how does this actually solve some of the problems that we have? It doesn't seem like it solves anything. It just, I mean, when we were young, like college
Yeah.
age,
Yeah.
I distinctly remember many, many, many pro tech people saying, "We're going to keep building this tech because it'll do things for us, and we'll have to work less in the future."
Yeah.
I said it, and I was like, "Great, I'm all about that. Great, let's have the computers organized. We'll do it." Here we are in the future. Nobody's working less.
No one's working less. Well, no, sorry, actually, so I'll push back a little bit. Two people talked about UBI, and then during COVID, we saw how few people are actually doing things important. So there is less work, but there's more bullshit work and there's more politics, particularly among people who can work in remote
Well, then
environments.
there you go. Same thing with ChatGPT. There's more words, but there's more bullshit words. So again, every time you go mass, you just end up with like a percentage that's just like not useful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and
So
this goes into college degrees too, because the same thing happened with college degrees, basically. It's just
same
more
thing. Yeah,
college
yeah.
degrees, less
My
signal.
question is, with a growing world population, are there bullshit people as well? Like,
Ooh,
does everybody get to live their dream, or are there just a lot of people who, I guess you would call them an NPC, but I don't
yeah,
know. But it's like,
yeah,
what percentage of people are just like human
out there.
robots already?
Yeah,
They're conditioned with a name and a credit card and a profile, but they
yeah.
don't really think for themselves, and they just use language. And I don't know. I haven't met them, but it's possible. 8
Well,
billion people, that many of them are not like
there. Well,
there.
it's just a program.
Yeah, it's just a program running. It's very possible. I don't know.
Well,
That's a
no,
scary
that,
thing.
yeah, well, no, it exists and it's there, and there's no like in the UBI scenario. So, have you heard of Nick Land?
No,
So, Nick Land is. Have you heard of accelerationism?
no.
So accelerationism is so there's two tribes basically. It's two overarching tribes now. Like, forget the Republicans, forget the Democrats. Like the only thing that really matters is the technology part. I mean, I'm not saying that like as if that there are no things that other matter, but in terms of like how quickly this thing is changing and like who can kind of see into the future, there's the accelerationists who want to just get the technology, train the LLMs, just do the things and like no regulation, no nothing, just full on. Then there's the degrowthers, and the degrowthers want to stop it all because it's going to kill us all. The accelerationists, they actually have a philosopher who they base their ideas on, although many of them don't know who he is. And his name is Nick Land. And I was listening to a podcast. He went and studied Marx and studied capital and studied all these different things and is trying to, and so he has this idea, and the idea that eventually became accelerationism is that in order to break capitalism, which is this autonomous thing that will, wherever it sees value or any sort of hint of value, it automatically applies capital. And then as it's the same thing you were describing with Facebook and stuff like that. Well, we're doing it because we have to, because of the efficiency, somebody else will do it. So it sees and exploits that in a positive feedback loop, and it's autonomous, it's on its own, it can't be stopped. And so the only way you stop it and you protect the humanist vision is that you basically just allow it to exponentially grow until it collapses of its own accord. And then at that time, that's where we can become human again, because this thing has collapsed.
Yeah,
And
we
so
just fill it until we can't anymore.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, And so
Sounds like where we're
that's
at.
well, that we're it feels like we're right at the beginning before the drop, before the drop
Hmm.
in the before it gets really crazy. Because
Yeah.
right now we just get the hint of the craziness, but we don't it doesn't feel like it's really hit yet. But yeah, what's your take on that? Because that relates back to that NPC thing, which is and I've been reading this book about my grandfather and the start of the new world order that we have that started in the 1945s after World War II, where like you had the small elite that was sort of running the country, and that was everywhere in the world. It was like that, and now you have like there's still a small elite running the country, but we have this sort of democracy, and we have social media. So not only can everybody vote, but also everybody can make their opinions heard. And so it's like just like, but then some of those people are just repeating messages that they've heard, and just like a lot of them.
But it's not their opinion. They're
Yeah,
just
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
recycling the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And once you start pressing them, that they don't have many layers deep. It's just like
yeah,
one or two layers, and
yeah,
then they can't reason after that.
yeah,
But then you have this culture of everybody's entitled to their opinion. It's like, well, but how many people have really thought about it? And
yeah.
yeah, no, it's messy. I don't know.
So what does a humanist, how do we make sure that there's like like the vision that you were talking about, like Jobs had something really interesting, and as you saw, I was reading his biography book. He felt like he was a rebel. He was part of the counterculture. And then
Yeah,
starting around the 90s and early 2000s, he then became the man. He
right.
was having, he could call up
Yeah,
Obama in 2008 and like
yeah,
make his understanding relevant to Obama. And so he became the man. And then, but did he have an actual vision? Because he gave us this vision of the personal device and the well-designed computer, the aesthetics. Like if it weren't for Steve Jobs, we would just have like mindless industrial slop,
yeah,
and that we were like both in the software and the hardware. But
yeah.
as you mentioned, there's no vision beyond that. Was he like the last vision? Do you think there is no like what's Sam Altman doesn't seem like he has a vision except for
No,
it's super intelligence and it's coming. Like yeah, is that the
no.
end of vision?
I have to believe that Steve probably thought about 40 years later,
Yeah,
um, and wasn't just going for the next thing. I know he really cared about talking to the computer. That was the
yeah,
thing that he
yeah,
was into.
yeah,
So this
and
whole
that's happened.
AI chat stuff is kind of in line with that.
Yeah.
Um, Now finally Apple's upgrading Siri and you can be able to talk to it. I like that. It sounds reasonable. Um, yeah, but why? Also, like population has grown a lot. I think it's like
Mm,
doubled since the mid 90s.
mm,
Um, you have social media promoting travel, so traveling has become super tricky and not as fun.
yeah.
Everybody's like squeezed on a plane, and everybody's being strapped for every cash amount they can get, and cities are overcrowded with tourists, and they're instituting things like used to be able to just drive up to Rocky Mountain National Park 45 minutes from here, and I have to get a timed entry.
Oh yeah, they did the same thing
You know,
in San Francisco. So you have to
and
be
then
out. Yeah, you have
yeah,
to
they
be
have
off in
in
the
Venice too.
forest.
You have to get reservations and stuff. So I'm like, okay, well, are we just going to keep getting more and more people?
Well, there's two things that I want to respond to. There's the first. I think the AI is going to like you were talking about no vision for technology, and that's because technology has become synonymous with computers and computation information and software.
Yeah,
That feels like with AI is about to lose. Like it's going to be wrapped up. Like it's still going to be valuable, but it's like the original Jetsons future of hard technology changes in space flight and all those things. Like I think we're gonna
yeah,
have a lot new things coming down the pipeline that change the characteristics of everything we just discussed.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I've been thinking about like, okay, so VR stuff was starting to come online in 2015. I remember Google Cardboard, early
yep,
stuff. And it's like, okay, this is kind of cool. Here we are now, almost 10 years later. Now we have Apple Vision, although it's
yep,
not widely
no,
adopted, but it's
yeah,
like, okay, it took 10 years to make something.
yeah,
That was a long time. I thought it would kind of go faster. Then the AI stuff happened like very quickly.
yeah,
Like COVID was
yeah,
quiet and
yeah.
it showed up. So I'm wondering now, 2024, 2025, when when does society start to look totally unrecognizable
Yeah.
compared to, let's say, 2010? Because right now you could argue it's just further along from where we
Hmm.
were
Hmm.
14 years ago. But
Hmm.
maybe by 2030, it's like really different. People have died.
Hmm.
Younger people have become older. Society is working differently, and maybe it's a little bit unrecognizable.
Hmm.
Maybe we're on the verge of moving into a space where COVID will feel like a distant memory, and we'll
Hmm.
be in this whole new space.
A
And
new
again,
paradigm.
I don't know what's so good about that. I'm looking at like the working class people that run everything, like they're not having any better of a life than they had
Yeah.
in the 90s
Yeah.
at all. At all. They just have more stuff to buy.
And cheaper.
They
Well,
didn't have
no,
all
well,
this
sorry,
stuff
it
to
was
buy.
cheaper. Now it's getting more expensive. Uh,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
the currency is inflating as well, so that it all changes everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know. I know if we just continue to a trajectory of more and more people, and they have to build more houses, and the houses that they're
That's
building are just like little boxes,
well, that's
and whatever.
the other thing that I remember now I want to talk about is
Yeah.
there's a demographic crisis. So it's actually the opposite. Like actually that we're not having kids anymore. That in 20 to 30 years, there's actually going to be just like China and Japan and Korea going through right now. That's happening
Yeah.
everywhere else. Like that's going to happen to the point
Okay.
where we're not going to have new people, but then we'll have robots. Uh,
Yeah. Okay.
and so it'll
Sounds kind
be,
of good.
yeah. It's like, but still, there's the point which you mentioned, like the Rocky National Forests, the fact that you have to get a reservation and the college degree, and
Yeah.
like why did a limited amount of those things? Why was it better when there was a limited amount of things? And that brings in like the nature of desire and desiring things that only a small amount of other people have.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's always been privileged to privileged few forever that
Yeah,
get something,
yeah,
and then they set the trends. Now you have like I think India or something is like is like growing in fast food chicken, you know, and people are watching media from other countries
yeah,
wanting all the things that Americans have,
yeah.
and they're considered developing nations. And I'm like, I don't like this because not everybody in the whole world can live like Americans are living, nor should they, nor should we. So it doesn't seem possible that actually everybody in the whole world is going to get to have the things that are promoted on the media. It's just not going to happen. Not everybody in the whole world is going to have fast food chicken or iPhones or cars, right? It can't be. So we're
Unless
supposed to
we
go.
get nuclear power and really cheap energy and things in terms of manufacturing change. Um,
Maybe, but then isn't that also still destroying the environment even faster and more?
Nuclear power, no, I would say nuclear power doesn't destroy
Oh,
it to the
that
same degree as well, so if we had nuclear
yeah,
power and solar power, those two things
sure.
together basically feel like they would not be a detractor to the environment
But what
except
about like all the mining of the metals? They're starting to do underwater deep sea ocean mining for
hmm,
metals. That's not
interesting.
good. Yeah, in the Pacific, there's like an area that it's full of nickel or something, and they're
Interesting.
sending companies to go dig up the ground, which is not good for the
For
ecosystem
the
to get
ocean.
metals.
Well, so there's
So
asteroid mining. So asteroid mining
there's
could
that too.
actually be, and that feels like a total net positive. Like it doesn't feel like the asteroids are floating around there in the space, or there's no ecosystem up there. So,
Okay, go
and
get
it's
them.
what's that? Go get
Go get
them.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
So that could promote like that everybody on the planet, particularly with the demographic crisis, lowering the population. And
Mhm.
that then brings into mind like what happens if we could bring back the Americans 1960 version of building something to last. But as we've been talking about, the sort of the thing that we're in right now, it seems to
Yeah,
lead to shittier products that are much cheaper. So,
yeah.
but maybe with the robots, then we can start to, or Claude kind of teaching us how to build our own products, that type of thing. Maybe that could work.
Yeah, maybe.
Mhm.
I think about how the bubonic plague killed like half of Europe
Uh-huh.
in the 1300s, but not the other half. And so the remaining people
Yep.
suddenly experienced like tremendous wealth. It
Yep.
was like way more for everybody.
Yep.
And then because of the spaciousness of it, we were moved into the Renaissance and a new humanistic approach.
Yep.
Instead of like man is a slave to God, man is like, no, and man is God, and we should
Yeah.
celebrate man. And that was
Interesting.
a whole revolution in that regard. That here we are, everything came from that period. So if we had something like that again, where the population decreases, but we still have all of the amazing technology, we could experience tremendous wealth for everybody who's left.
Yeah.
And that could bring about a new age of enlightenment as well, which could be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, just so many people are just struggling to make it work. Like the numbers don't make sense. It doesn't
Yeah. The
work.
numbers don't add up unless you get sort of like the crazy exponentials that we have in software, but applied to the physical world.
Yes, applied to the physical world. Yeah. It's interesting how like the stock market and all that stuff works in that if you already have, they say the quickest way to make $1 million is to start with 10.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So there are many people out there who have lots of money and
Yeah.
they don't have to do anything. And because the money's invested, they just like make more and more money. They
Yeah.
literally could be in bed all day and make $10,000 for the day,
Yeah.
whereas somebody else is working at a 7-Eleven making $100 for the day, and they have no way of changing that scenario.
Yeah.
So that's some serious inequality there.
Yeah.
Uh, you could argue, well, this person put money into the system and they're fueling the economy, whatever, but it's not actually going to the people. It's just going back to the
Well,
people who already have money.
there's and this is the other kind of thing with the remote work, particularly the knowledge work, but also manufacturing, that all went to other places. So China did build a rich civilization, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
required the US.
Whatever there.
Yeah, exactly. Like so,
Right, right.
and so there's
Yeah,
that.
it's so annoying
Yeah,
because we could have if everything was stayed in America, and America was always isolationist
yeah, yeah,
until
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
World
totally.
War II.
Yeah,
Imagine what we could have here
yeah,
if all that stuff. I also think about little side note of
yeah,
American history about how in my mind, kind of Democrats, the Democrat
yeah,
uh, ideal goes
yeah.
back to like Thomas Jefferson,
Mm,
a party
mm,
for the people,
mm,
versus the Federalist, which is like pro-union, pro-infrastructure. And after the Civil War, the Republicans kind of took over the whole country. They only had two Democrats in power since the Civil War to FDR. So it was all Republican based.
interesting.
And FDR comes along with a completely new democratic platform, which is less about the common man and more about the common worker.
Uh,
And he was bullish on like we are a society of workers now. Okay, we need to have
uh,
second Bill of Rights. Everybody is guaranteed to participate in the economy. So
uh,
he did a lot of stuff in his 12 years, well, almost 12 years, and then JFK followed up with some more civil rights stuff, and LBJ followed up with his Great Society. But basically, they changed it so much that the government got so involved
mm.
in workers' rights and civil rights that there was a huge backlash apparently in the 70s and 80s, um,
Oh,
away from that. Too much
with
government
Reagan, with
involvement.
Reagan. Yeah, yeah,
Reagan.
yeah,
Then you have like the Clinton era, which seems like
yeah. It's
more of
all.
a centrist Democrat,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I think, well, what would have happened if we kept going with FDR, LBJ, and these
Uh,
ideas?
this.
Imagine today where the wealth, we could have had like pristine streets, and everybody has healthcare, and everybody has childcare, and everybody has, and we're just like, I don't know, somehow like that. But then the other side would argue, well, we wouldn't have had the same productivity, if we didn't
Yeah.
reship the jobs over. So we're in this weird space now, I feel, where I can't really tell what side
Yeah.
is
Who's
about
on the
because
side?
like
Yeah, yeah.
everybody's kind of pro-business at this point, and nobody's about the common man at all. And all the money is not going to the basic people anymore. And
Well,
that,
okay. Yeah, this is really interesting territory. So I've been going back to this book that was written about my grandfather and my great uncle Joe. And the last time I read it was 10 years ago, and I was on a very different political spectrum at that point.
mhm.
And so I'm reading this book, and so the Democrats, as you were talking about, so my great uncle Joe was basically a sycophant for FDR. So because my great great grandmother was the cousin of FDR, so my great uncle Joe could go and get a meeting with FDR and be like,
Well,
And so this was right around the isolationist period. So a lot of the Republicans were very much isolationist, not about the war. And then FDR was trying to get the war. And then my great uncle Joe saw that, was supportive of like going and stopping what was going on in Europe. And so he wrote these pieces. He did a deal with FDR, who he tried to keep out of it so that nobody could see it. So because
Hmm.
then he would have been considered a propagandist, but he basically was a
Oh,
propagandist for FDR to get America back in the war. And then he went over to
oh,
China to help support the U.S. volunteer group that was fighting airplanes inside of China that was trying to fight off the Japanese totally as volunteers. So he became a volunteer for them. And then he basically helped FDR manage the situation in China as they slowly got into the war. But the Democrats are really interesting. What you mentioned about the Democrats is really interesting. What you mentioned about FDR is the welfare state, like, and the fact that there is no person who, no group of people who are after the common man.
I
Because I
mean,
would
yeah, the Democrats are
RFK.
saying now with this new campaign, but truly, I don't think it's the systems are in place anymore. It's something else.
Well, yeah, no. Well, my personal opinion is that the Democrats have been hollowed out by the new left. So once the new left came on board in the 1960s and the 1970s, that's
Oh,
when sort of Marxism weaved its way into the country without calling it Marxism, and into the academia and everything like that. And so, and then we're now at the tail end of that, where the Democrats have become a sort of establishment, elitist establishment, egalitarian, who are
yeah,
anti, or they're named egalitarianism, but there is no egalitarianism.
yeah,
And it's sort of like this thing. And so, but then the neocons are allied with them. So the traditional Republican versus Democrat is now under one thing, which wants more war. And that's like the main thing. And if you have to go, let me know.
I got a doorbell, but I don't know who that is. No, it's fine. I'm not expecting anybody.
And so then, so RFK, I would say RFK is actually, ironically, because we talked about JFK, RFK is ironically the one who is after the common man, who is trying to support the common man.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, what's your take on that?
Well, again, we have to do something now. That's
Yeah,
the common man needs an advocate.
yeah,
Um,
interesting.
uh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, it was funny too, when we were, I remember Facebook days, a lot of us were kids, and
Yeah.
obviously I was thinking about like, okay, so one day everybody's going to get married and have kids, and are
Yeah.
we still going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah. Yeah.
working the same way? Are we going to do something different because we're going to be in power? And I was like, oh, they wouldn't let that. We're going to make a whole new thing. Yeah, like these guys here, they don't want to have to work and be away from their kids, right? So we're going to make a new thing. Well, here we are. Everybody has kids, but everybody's still working. And they don't, and they have to work to pay for childcare because somebody's got to watch the kids while they're working to make the money to pay for the person watching the kids because they're
Yeah.
not home.
And you can't live in
So
the city anymore. You can't live in the big city anymore. You have to live in a tier two city. But even
yeah,
in the tier two city, it's now too expensive.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, we're heading for some kind of breaking point as
Yeah.
is expected.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I'm not going to claim to know anything. All I say is that I've been trying to educate myself on like how we got here and what are some forces from the past. And yeah, the through line that I can find is the lack of advocacy for the common man,
Uh,
and it's all business oriented. And interestingly too, when we say business oriented, you could make the case like not just big business, but like even small business.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
but with Instagram can form their own small business
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
so easily compared to what it used to be. And so does that count as business oriented? Maybe the future is that everybody is a business. Everybody's their own LLC. Eric LLC, Stewart LLC. We are a business entity. Therefore, I participate in the economy as a business, just like Facebook or anybody else. And so maybe every citizen in America is a business, and that changes it instead.
So
Um,
there's a great quote from Jay-Z that we can finish off with, which says, "I'm not a businessman. I'm a business man." Like,
yeah, yeah, that could be.
and that's
So more to come. We can plan to talk again in a year
Yeah,
And
to
we'll
check in
we'll
on
use
that.
AI now to give us a summary, and we'll check in on the various points that we discussed and
Yeah,
see where we're at.
brilliant. Okay, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'll once it gives us I'll put an email reminder to send us in 6 months to schedule it based on these
Yeah.
questions, basically.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I feel like we covered a lot of good stuff here, and I'm waiting to see so many things over the next while. We're about to head into some weird territory this fall.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna get weird.
So
And I'll be back, but
yeah.
I'll talk more
Yeah.
after we stop recording about that.